Hi class! Where the heck am I? Oh yeah, my new apartment. Yeah, that's the reason that this video is late and last week's video was a repost. I've moved to Brooklyn! Why? Well, I'm moving in with my lovely girlfriend. It's kinda closer to work and there is this incredible donut shop around the corner. That's my migration story, and now 5 global history migrations that you should know about. Number 1, out of Africa migration. We are all African in origins. For most of our history, or more appropriately prehistory, Homo sapiens have lived in Africa, with our earliest fossils being found in modern-day Ethiopia, dating back about 200,000 years. So why did we leave? Well, not sure. One theory suggests that the last ice age, which ended about 70,000 years ago, really hit us hard and drove our numbers down to about 10,000. But then the weather started getting nice, people started getting frisky, and boom, population explosion. We started venturing outward and the world was our oyster. Now you could consider this an early example of economic migration. No, people weren't migrating for jobs or money, they were migrating for resources. Being that they were nomadic hunter-gatherer societies, following the food supply was essential for survival. And some would follow that food supply all the way to the Earth's end in the... Number 2, migration to the Americas. Now this one can be a little bit tricky. Now we're pretty sure that the earliest migration to the Americas were facilitated using a natural land bridge called Beringia, which connected Siberia to Alaska. But from there, it gets hazy. See, during the last glacial period, there was more frozen water, which dropped sea levels and exposed the natural land bridge, which was about 1,000 miles wide. But if conditions were too cold, massive glaciers would block the land routes and giant icebergs would make boat travel near suicidal. And once you got across, making your way out of Alaska was at times impossible due to giant ice sheets. Honestly, if you're looking to see the social sciences like anthropology, archaeology, biology, and linguistics come together to piece together the past, this is the topic for you. What we do know is that about 12,000 years ago, we see the first widespread habitation of the Americas. Stay tuned for the rest. Number 3, the Jewish diaspora. Migrations can be caused by political reasons, and in this case, religious ones. A diaspora is a scattering of a population. Now, the Jewish diaspora can refer to the Jews that left the kingdom of Judea, now modern-day Israel, back in the 6th century when the Babylonians rolled into town. While some did stay, others left and went to Egypt, and still some more started a Jewish community in Babylon. And when Cyrus and the Persians, new band name, I call it, well, when they took over the Babylonians, they freed the Jews and allowed the ones in Babylon to go back to their homeland. The Jewish diaspora can also refer to the scattering of the Jews under Roman rule. The Romans had made Judea a province in 63 BC and all was relatively well. But after a series of revolts and uprisings in the late 60s AD and then again in the 2nd century, mass execution and enslavements drove most of the Jews out. Though you could argue that a majority of Jews at that point had already left their homeland, living in cities like Alexandria. Migration for the Jewish people wouldn't stop there, with most Jews today either living in Israel or the United States of America. Number 4, the African slave trade. Now speaking of crossing an ocean, the Jewish diaspora might have been a means of escape, but the African slave trade was an example of forced migration. Slavery was nothing new to Africa. It had existed in various forms for millennia, whether it be enslaved people being moved around inside the continent or to places in Europe, the Middle East, or Asia. But the African slave trade, as part of the triangle trade, was on a scale hitherto unseen. P.S. If you use the word hitherto, you sound smarter. African slaves were used to fill the need for labor in the New World, since the native people were dying from newly introduced diseases, and God forbid the Europeans do all the work themselves. All in all, about 12 million Africans were shipped across the Atlantic by slave traders and merchants from Portugal, France, Spain, Great Britain, the Netherlands, the US, and Africa. Remember that the first step in this process involved African leaders and merchants that sold other Africans to Europeans for new goods. And number 5, Irish migration. In 1845, a potato blight ravaged Ireland. Well, actually, it held a lot of places in Europe, but Ireland was particularly vulnerable. Ireland was relatively poor and was kept that way by economic and political restrictions placed on it by the nation that ruled it at the time, England. And while not indigenous to the Emerald Isle, the potato had become essential as a food and a crop for the Irish poor. So when the potato blight hit, and hit again, and hit again, and hit again, it was disaster for Ireland. In what's known as the Great Famine, at least 1 million Irish died of starvation and disease due to crop failures of up to 75% and slow to no English assistance. Before the famine, Ireland had a population of about 8 million. By 1850, just 5 years after the start of the famine, population had fallen by at least 25%, or 2 million, with at least 1 million dying and 1 million emigrating to places like the US. And the population would continue to decline as more and more saw the US as their future and land of opportunity and not the English-controlled country of their birth. Ireland still hasn't recovered to pre-famine numbers, with their current population around 4.6 million. So there you go, 5 global history migrations. Would make a nice framework for a thematic essay. Shout out to Mrs. Zarcy for allowing me to rock out her 3rd period class. Now, if you're a teacher that's used one of my videos in your class, snap a pic, send it to me, and allow me to highlight you here. Her class was rocking out to my last video, the Miley Cyrus 13 Colonies parody song, Moving to the Colonies. And with Columbus Day coming up, you should probably check out my 5 facts about Columbus video. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Betts Class. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Be safe, and I'll see you next time.